Boom, and we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Another Tuesday night chat with the Muskrat, Mr. Creole Catfishing. Tonight, we are joined by Mr. Adam Cook. What's going on, fellas?
What's happening?
We've been doing a lot of fishing here lately. A lot of fishing, little catching. Actually, the bite the last few days has picked up pretty good. A lot of swing and misses for the last week or so. Just been tough conditions. Our river is just insane, up and down. I nicknamed it the Yo-Yo River because honestly, I used to joke that it was different day to day. Right now, it's different hour to hour.
Yeah,
we went from like 44,000 at the dam to like nothing, like 8. They just shut it off, and our hydro has been down. It's scheduled to be down for 30 days. I think we're on week 2 of our hydro being down, so it's got everything messed up. So, but
what dam is that?
The Greenup Dam, Greenup, Kentucky.
Okay.
And actually, the dam below me, Meldal Dam, is its hydros is also down, scheduled for 30 days.
Okay.
I'm going to assume I don't have any information to back this up, but I'm going to assume if they've got to do maintenance and stuff, this is the time of the year to take a hydro down. The temperatures aren't crazy. People aren't running their heat. They ain't really running their AC. So the demand on energy right now is low. So maybe that's why they're down for maintenance or problems. Maybe it's just crazy luck. But we see hi to some. What's that?
I said that makes sense.
Yeah, there's some folks out there that stay in touch with the Lockmasters, and actually the company Zach works for does all the maintenance work on the dam. It's the same company. Okay. So sometimes he gets some inside information on what's going on, but we say hi to some folks that are tuned in with us tonight. We appreciate you guys stopping in. I see Mike Sampson first in the house tonight. They don't always show me in order, but it looked like Sampy was here at 7 o'clock. He got him a seat, got some popcorn. He's ready to go.
You're early. I like that.
We got Brian Big Wrench, channel member. What's up, Brian? Thanks for stopping in. We got Tommy Long and Minnow Dunkers. I'll see if I can pull this picture up. Tommy sent me a channel cat from the Sandusky Bay Ironman tournament that Tyra and Craig and them put on. 30-pound channel cat.
Wow.
Tanks.
That's unreal. That's hard for me to imagine.
We got Fishing with the Mid-South. There's Jeremy, Finseeker TV. What's up, buddy? Operations Vets with Nets. What's up, Rich? That's what I'm sporting tonight. My Operation Vets with Nets. Great group of guys. We're going to get Rich on the show here soon and talk about that organization and what we can do to help them out. We got Kevin Walters, another channel member. What's up, Kevin? Monster Cat Catfishing, our friend and family member. Stonefly71, Matt. What's up, buddy? There's Miss Becca, hostess with the Moses. Thank you for stopping in. Jeff Duvall, Fishizzle's in the house. What's up, buddy? Bugman22, Maurice Cason's in the house. Buckeye Catfishing. Pontoon Jody. Well, she's here early.
I know, right?
She's here early. She was here for Adam, she said.
Okay.
She said do with us. Yeah, I understand entirely. I'd do the same.
That's the only reason I'm here.
My brother's here. Dreadneck, what's up, buddy? Thanks for stopping in. Donald Long and Net's in the house. Let's see. Tom with LG Bass. What's up, buddy? Jerry Parker. There's Freddie, FOA Customs and Gear. He says, hey, fellas in chat in the office dropping products on the site again tonight. He is one busy dude.
Yes, he is.
He just doesn't stop. I don't know when he's going to think enough's enough, but I think he's burned the candle at both ends. But he's got the energy for it, so God bless him. Let's see who else we got. Mr. Tully, what's going on, Tully? We got somebody from Facebook. I don't have my Facebook pulled up right now, but we got Facebook user tuned in, said, hi, guys. Thanks for stopping in. Dale Hayslip. Zach Murray's in the house. My brother, River Warrior. What's up, buddy? Says, Semper Fi Marines. Fishing for Whiskers. What's going on, Rhonda? Thank you for stopping in. Buckeye Catfishing, says, Jim says, we are at Markland Lock today. Downriver at the ramp had zero flow. Central Channel had very little flow. All right. He says he sees the jersey. Looks good. Appreciate you, bud. Let's see who else we got. Man, Crappie Day fish on. Man, it's getting away from me. You're going to have to help me out, buddy. Sean Abney.
Yeah, I think you're right about here.
River Cats Tack. You saw it same time I did.
my buddy, Mr. John. What's going on, man? I see Jerry Parker's in the house.
Mom and Dad's there as well. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mom and Dad, for tuning in. They're sitting back on the couch watching on the big old
I
big
want
screen.
to give a holler to my dad too, to Pops. He won't be in chat tonight, but he is basically doing like a little family reunion thing at my aunt's house with some of my family from Texas. So
From Texas.
I want to I got people in Texas, South Texas, believe it or not. So yeah, definitely want to give a shout out to them.
There's our brother Bobcat. What's up, buddy? Thanks for stopping in. Hope you're feeling better. Actually, I haven't talked to Bobcat in a little while. I need to change that. I'll talk to him. Chucky's in the house. What's up, Chucky? I just want to say what's up, Chuck. Lance McCoo guy. Holy moly.
Lance? I think we're caught up. Maybe
we're caught up. I don't know.
Maybe we're caught up.
We'll try to catch you guys on the way in. If somebody pulls in, starts mingling in afterwards. But first of all, Adam, thanks so much for taking time to join us tonight and hang out. And
absolutely.
Jeremy and I have been talking a little bit about show ideas and different things that's going on. And I'll just be honest with you, it's kind of a selfish topic. Stan 3, what's up? The man, the myth, the legend. For some of us, it's either a tournament situation or just the pure desire to catch a trophy-sized catfish. And, we've watched you I've watched you for a long time, honestly. We met a couple of years ago, I think at least up, was it Akron?
Yeah.
Yep. Up at that thing there that
Willie Cahoon too.
Willie Cahoon, that's right.
Yeah.
Together, yeah. So, but anyway, I've been following you for a long time, and man, you got a guide service. You make a living out of putting people on fish, and it's not just your backyard. You travel and consistently find and catch big fish wherever you go. And so I was just kind of curious, selfishly. What's that? $10 make the blues holla. Listen and relax, and thank you, Brandon. Catfishing Dreams, man. Appreciate that. So I was just kind of curious about what it's like for you. Whether you're traveling to a new area, or even if you're going, doing your homework in your backyard, you've got clients you want to take out and put on big fish. I just kind of want to know what it was like for you. Kind of like if you could take us through that whole process of, all right, I'm going to go, next week, this date, and I've got to go out and I want to catch a pig. Whether that's a client, whether that's you going for, in a tournament, situation, but just kind of walk us through what it's like for you to start, catch, and results.
Well, I think, to start out, try not to talk everybody's head off.
Oh, you go right ahead.
Go for it. We're all taking notes.
We got notebooks ready. Don't you worry.
I think the number one thing is to start with just the understanding of the fish. Mm-hmm. Different times of the year, I'm going to expect to see fish in certain areas. I'm going to expect to see them doing certain things. And one thing that I stand firm behind, and there is some differences between body of water to body of water. Mm-hmm. But overall, catfish are pretty much the same catfish, regardless if you're in Virginia, regardless if you're in Santee Cooper, if you're on the Tennessee River, if you're on the Mississippi River, if you're in Texas. Again, minor changes here and there. There's going to be some variance depending on bait, forage, climate, water quality, but overall, they still have the same habits. They're still driven by water temperature. They're still driven by consistency. These fish, a lot like any other fish, like consistency. That is what, in my opinion, allows these fish to really dial in and get comfortable and set patterns to where you can predict and consistently find them. And, these situations right here based off of the conditions. So, I think the big thing is first is just the understanding of the fish. Once you grasp, and we can go over in a little bit more detail, different times of the year, example wise, but For instance, right now, it's warm just about anywhere you go in the country. Maybe up north, you're starting to get some cooler stuff. The water temperature's coming down a little bit quicker, but much through the mid-south, in the South Tennessee River, Mississippi, where like Creole is, I would expect that water temperature to still be in the 80, upper 70 degree range, which is for a river. You don't really have a thermocline. You do have a preferred water depth that I think that those fish will still like to hang out in. But in lakes, for sure, that's still warm enough for there to be a thermocline present, So if it's a lake situation, for example, I already know that I'm going to be looking for fish right at that thermocline if I'm going to a lake. So that already takes a lot of water right out of the equation right there.
Yeah.
If it's a river situation, it's still warm enough to where I would expect during the day, those fish are going to be a little bit deeper. Just because there's not enough oxygen up in the shallow waters. It hasn't quite got cool enough yet. Maybe up there where you're at, Roger, and you can correct me if you're wrong, but if it's still up there, upper 70s, 80 degree water, there's not much oxygen in that shallow water. So during the daytime, I wouldn't even attempt to really go any less than 15 foot, 20 foot of water, unless I'm absolutely not seeing anything. And that's, probably the next, try not to get too ahead of myself, but probably the next thing is that I'm very patient and very thorough. So once I know, I get on the water, I see that water temperature, I kind of get a feel for what the wind is going to allow me to do on that particular body of water. And that's going to automatically isolate a few areas. I'm going to look at my map. If it's a place I'm not familiar with, and I'm going to say, okay, well, that gives me this area, this area, this area. And one thing that I'll say, and anybody that's fished with me, sometimes people give me crap for it, is that I'll ride for an hour and a half if I got to, 2 hours. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if I got a trip on the boat. Sometimes I will ride with people on the boat. Now, I know that's something that a lot of people may get frustrated. They may be like, man, come on, is this guy going to put us on some fish? But I'm the kind of guy that I'm not going to set the boat down unless I think I'm going to catch one over 50. So if it takes me an hour to find that, and I'm not saying once I do set the boat down, we're going to catch a 50, but I'm not just going to put the boat down to catch some fish. And that's just kind of my mentality as far as like from a guiding perspective. Tournaments, that mentality works sometimes, but it doesn't work nearly as much as looking for guaranteed fish. And that's something that I've had to break myself out of in the past year that I was very good about in my earlier years. The last couple of years I've been stubborn, and I've always approached tournaments in the last couple of years with that guiding perspective that I have to catch the biggest fish. Problem is the biggest fish sometimes don't want to cooperate. And most of the time in a tournament setting, that average 40-pound fish is what you're looking for. That's most of the time what's going to win a tournament. If you're consistently catching those 40-pound fish, you know what I mean? You're consistently there's probably bigger fish in there. Obviously, you're tournament fishing, pre-fishing, you're not going to spend a bunch of time catching them. Once you know they're there, you're going to get out of there. You should anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But normally, if you're on that class of a fish, there's bigger ones in there. And you just kind of, I think we lost Creole there.
He's popped his camera off. He's right there.
Oh.
I'm just getting adjusted.
But I just kind of break areas down like that until I find what I'm looking for fish wise. And there is certainly some situations where I may not find what I'm looking for. I've had a couple of tournaments. I had a tournament on Pickwick earlier this year, and I was bound and determined that I was going to find them fish down south. Pre-fishing, found some fish. You know what I mean? It took me a while, but I finally found them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we got a game plan. Well, we run all the way down there. And I know meanwhile, I know there's fish at the dam. You know what I mean? There's plenty of fish at the dam.
Yeah.
I didn't think those fish were going to win the tournament. So I'm like, I'm going south. You know what I mean? I know there's bigger fish down there. Well, the weather changed, fish moved. I couldn't find them tournament day. You know, the tournament was won at the dam where there was the most probable chance of, catching fish. There was a higher quantity of fish in a smaller area.
Yeah.
And I think, in a tournament setting and a guide setting is a little bit, they're kind of the same, but they're a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Right.
Tournaments, especially when you're not local, you're out of town, you want to put your best foot forward. You want to be, at least in my opinion, I want to be in a place where I'm going to give myself the most amount of opportunity in 8 hours. Because those big fish, like I said, if there's not a whole lot of fish in there, but there's some big fish in there, you gotta throw in the factor that they're one of those fish you might mess up. You may not get him. The line could break. Might be a bad hookup. Anything could happen. Versus going to a place where there's guaranteed fish. You're going to get a bag, and then maybe if you need to upgrade later, maybe go find some of those more isolated, bigger fish. Locally, it's kind of like a little bit. It's not as technical because I've been out there 20 years, so I know there's only so many areas I'm going to find those fish.
We got a quick
try
question.
to go in depth with that, but really it's not even a mental thing that I think about. It's just something that I kind of do. You know what I mean? I know there's certain areas, and I know if I don't see them here, I know I'm going to see them here. If they don't bite here, I know that I can go up here and I can find fish. So
Right.
I know that's really not the answer you want to hear. That's just, once you get into a habit, it isn't much of a thought process as it is when you go out of town and tournament fish. But you can apply those same things, even though it's not really something that I think about, it's still things that I apply no matter which body of water I go to.
That's important. We actually have a question here from Operations Best with Nets, our buddy Rich, which I'll let you answer it. It says, if you're on a lake and the thermocline is around 25 feet, do you still look at areas that have a lot of structure cover in deeper water?
I mean, certainly fish aren't just confined to above that thermocline. You will have some fish that will go below that. They're not going to stay there.
Right.
It's obviously not the most comfortable thing for them. You know what I mean? They're not going to put themselves in a compromising position.
Yeah.
They're not very intelligent, but they're not dumb either. They know how to survive. So no, typically if I know that thermocline's setting about 25 feet, I'm going to look for, especially if it's somewhere I'm not used to fishing a lot, I'm going to look for high percentage areas that I know fish should be traveling right in that range. So whether it's an underwater shoal at 25 feet or an underwater point or a ledge, there could be structure in that depth range. You know what I mean? Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to bump that.
You're good.
But I'm personally, if we're at the time of the year where that thermocline's setting good, I'm not going to waste my time looking in 40, 50 foot of water. I'm just not going to do it.
Do you find on a thermocline that you find more activity right at the thermocline with the bait and the big? Okay. Yeah. That's, I see that a lot. And I don't know if I'm right, but my perception is that area right there is actually oxygen rich.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
So that's why your big fish prefer to be there.
One of the ways that you can test, you'll see it on your depth finder if you have a decent graph and you understand what you're looking for. But if you don't have a depth finder, like when I got started fishing, I knew that I was outside of that parameter if I threw out a piece of live bait and the bait was dead when I pulled it in, 20, 30 minutes later to move spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a surefire way to know that you're a little bit too deep or something's wrong. You know what I mean?
Stan wants to know what do you feel is most important, depth, current, or bait in the area? Do you feel one is more important than the other?
Um, well, I'm assuming we're talking a river setting.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Who fishes the jig?
So, like, if you're in a river and those fish are used to having flow, current is definitely one of your most important factors. That flow is what's going to bring that scent to those fish, whatever you're setting up on, whether you're setting up on something specifically or you're setting up on a ledge anticipating fish are traveling through there. Definitely current, in my opinion, is the biggest thing that I'm going to look for. And if I don't have current, I'm obviously going to drag or drift. You know what I mean? I'm going to try and present that bait to those fish and try and get a reaction bite. It's not my favorite way of fishing. I will do it. I would rather have current. I'd rather set up on those fish that I know are there and get them to bite. I also spend a lot of time on my electronics. Not everybody is as comfortable with that. So, it's kind of something that it's just whatever you're comfortable with, really.
Yeah.
But there's not really a right or wrong way to go about that. And I guess I could give several different answers to that question. But
Right.
in my opinion, if they're used to having flow, current is definitely probably your biggest make or break factor for success. And that's probably the same way on the Ohio Tennessee River, because all of a sudden they shut off the dams, they shut the floodgates, cut the hydros back. Well, now those fish have no flow. They've used to have flow, so now they're going to fall back. They're going to move away from that dam. They're going to do something completely different that they wouldn't normally do until they start to get flow again. I think current.
You know what? I think I agree. When we fall into crazy situations here, when, like you said, the flow's shut off, the fish just they shut off. It seems like it takes them a day or two or three. I'm more comfortable in everything in threes. I don't care what the weather is. If it's done for three, the temperature, as long as it's done it for three, water rising or falling, I don't care as long as it's done it for 3 days. I feel like consistency is where fish get comfortable, and that
absolutely
catfish are a need over want species. They need certain things, and they'll have to do what they got to do to sustain their need. They may want to be in that deep water, but they can't be down there with the thermocline.
Right.
Pontoon Jody is wanting to know, and I'm thinking she's sticking strictly to flatheads here, because her question says, do you think that big fish travel, or do they stay, or they have a home area or a hole that they stay close to? She's been stalking a monster flathead for 2 years in the same spot.
So flatheads are definitely a little bit more territorial than blues. However, I can say from experience with blues, there is blues that have homes. You have your typical, fish that migrate. They just kind of, do what they do throughout the year. Just kind of do what they do throughout the year, whatever the conditions present, and they just react to their environment. But certainly you do have some blues that have homes. I know the biologists have said this and proven it for a fact with telemetry tags, that they have some fish that never leave more than 2 miles of where they were born. They just have everything that they need right there. They have no reason to leave. There's enough depth there. There's enough food there. It has a little bit of everything that they need throughout the year, and they'll never leave. And I know that for a fact. I'll kind of bounce back to like Stan's question, because I know he's a local guy to the James River. I know that they fish upriver. Certainly around the Dutch Gap area, I know there's several fish that I've caught, big fish that I've caught before. You know what I mean? They have a home. The biologists will even tell you that. They'll be like, there's a 70-pound fish over there that's his home right in there. Every time we shock in here, he's right there. But it does vary. You know what I mean? It's definitely a small percentage of blues that will do that versus flatheads that definitely are more homebody. They will travel a lot. You know, you got some of those
Right.
fish they've tagged in the Mississippi that have traveled 150 miles up to spawn and come on back down the Mississippi.
Yep.
Other flatheads, you know what I mean? Like on the James, they have little areas that they like to hang out in, whether they're confined by salinity or a numerous amount of other things. That's just their home. They don't go anywhere else.
Yeah, we've we've talked to several different people. I've listened to like Ted Ellenbecker, and talk about different studies and habits that he's followed and chased. And I know for a fact that I've talked to Justin and Tabitha that fished Kanawha River and Ohio River down here, that they've got flatheads named because they go back to the exact same spot, and they'll say, "Hey, we'll stop by and see if Steve's home," or "Hey, let's go see if Mary's over here or not." And they take them miles and miles for weigh in and come back a week later, and they're back wherever you dropped them off. They will get back to that hole.
Bradley Lale was telling me about that on a tournament that they had on, I think it was Wheeler. I'm not going to give too many specifics on where the fish was caught, but that fish was caught about 17 miles from the weigh-in. And they said within 2 weeks they caught that fish again in that same area.
Wow.
And it's a very distinct fish. You know what I mean?
Right.
They knew this fish was that one.
Had to be that one, yeah.
2 weeks, they caught it again.
Hey guys, if you guys haven't,
speak of the devil.
Hey, there he is, right there.
There he is.
What's going on, Brad?
What's up, Brad? Hey, hope everything's going well your way, buddy.
Absolutely.
We've been trying to get Brad on the
I
show.
haven't made a spot burn any of your spots, man.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should have said it was 30 miles instead of 17. They'll be tracking it from Ingalls Harbor, 17 miles.
Yeah, they just go up or down. They don't know. Oh shoot. So you spend a lot of time on your electronics, and so what electronics are you running, and that you're spending so much time? Because I'll be honest with you, Zach and I, we're the same. We really love. We could spend hours scanning and looking at the graph and be completely okay with it. Hey, where you at, Steve? He said you were his favorite buddy. He misses you.
What was the question again? I got sidetracked.
Hell, I got sidetracked.
Electronics. Excuse me. I'm a Lowrance guy.
Lowrance, okay.
Steve's one of them guys. He'll tell you. He picks on me about it. I'll ride for 2 hours if I got to.
If you're not seeing what you want to see, and so we're specifically talking about big fish here, right? There's times where we'll scan and we don't see what we want, or we're not seeing the activity that we want to see. We'll continue go until we start finding stuff that convinces us that, hey, this is it right here. Let's check it out. And here lately, it's all dragging on the Ohio. So I see Zach's comment, and I seen Tyre earlier. Dirty South dragon weights are his favorite, and it's no secret that I'm a big fan of Dirty South. I've been dragging them since they came out. But we have deliberately been dragging them through the nastiest stuff that we talked about this before the show, but the nastiest stuff we can find. And now we're kind of to the point where, like, do you think we can really get away with this? And we're like, just try it. And we're dragging and picking up fish in places we never thought we would ever drag. And now it's to the point where it doesn't matter what's down there. Send it.
Yeah.
And it really does kind of change your game and change your confidence, kind of like what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago about, confidence being key. And like we were saying before, do stuff you're not comfortable doing, because there may be a time or situation where your environment changes, things change, and you've got to adapt quickly, especially in a tournament situation. You got to make changes quickly or you're going to get left behind. And so that's what we've been doing, pushing ourselves to do stuff a little bit different. Like, man, I don't know if we should be dragging through this crap. Like, we'll buy more dragon weights if we have to. Just let's go.
That's all right.
But yeah. Let's see. I got behind on chat. I seen Willie Cahoon. We was talking about Willie just earlier today.
Yeah, old Willie.
Talking about the Akron, the show that we all got to hang out and get together with.
Everybody's talking about boat snacks now.
Boat snacks? Yeah, I didn't scroll down far enough. Please say zebra cakes. I don't know. If you guys haven't noticed, Adam's kind of ripped over there. I don't think he's eating zebra cakes anymore.
If he'd come spend a week or two with me, we could fix that quick.
I'll make an
snacks down
exception
here.
for some Christmas tree cakes.
Oh,
Okay.
Now he's talking.
All right.
Now he's talking.
What's going on, Mike?
All right. What's up, Mikey? All right. So we need to get back on track here.
Yeah.
So
I think a big question that I've asked other people a question before, but I really, really want a good answer from you for this one is, if you had to pick one,
It's a large, Bradley.
If you had to pick one, what you think is the biggest, let's say, mistake or bad habit that people have when they're trying to target big fish, but they're doing wrong, what would you say is the number one bad habit or biggest mistake people make?
that's a great question. Hey, there's Richard Fishing Freedom, member of 13 months, man. Thank you so much for your support.
Let's see. A bad habit.
Yeah.
Something you see that people do when they're hunting big fish, it just gets under your skin, makes you shake your head. Like, man, it's not how you want to do it.
Probably not. And man, I'm trying to think of how to handle this and say this in the nicest way that I can without discouraging him. I want to say it without discouraging anybody. That's what I should say.
There you go.
Because everybody has to learn some way. And you know, you're gonna pick things up from people along the way, whether you actually talk to them and you learn it from them firsthand or you've seen them doing it. But probably the biggest thing, and this is something that I see a lot on my home body of water, is people trying to implicate what you're doing. And they may not be comfortable doing what you're doing. They may not know what you know. They may not be as tech savvy on their electronics. Right. You know, they may see you just out there in the middle of nowhere and just be like, oh, well, you know, he's just out there in this depth, or he's out there, you know, doing this. And they may not know that there's a big brush pile right there.
Right.
Maybe they're not seeing it. Maybe they don't know, you know. The biggest thing probably that I see that a lot of people do, I mean, on a lot of different bodies of water, is just not take the time to apply their self to what they're fishing. You know, there's time and place to fish offshore. There's a time and place to fish near shore.
Yep.
But certainly, you know, just watching somebody and knowing big fish are in an area does not mean that you're going to go in there and catch big fish.
Yes.
I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And I don't want to say that because, like I said, everybody's got to learn some way.
Yep.
But I think
I don't want to discourage anybody, but even at higher levels, sometimes I see that where,
yeah,
you know, this guy catches where this person's catching them in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, the binoculars. But and you know, they'll come up in there and they'll pull up in there, you know, trying to figure out what it is that you're fishing. And maybe they actually take the time and ride and learn a little bit about, okay, well, he's fishing structure, or, you know, I can see the bait is, you know, doing X, Y, Z, or these big fish are just on this line. I mean, you have that weird stuff sometimes where it's literally down to the feet. You know, a specific, it might be 31 feet that those fish are just on that line. You know what I mean? They're not in 33 foot of water. They're not in 30 foot. They're in 31 foot of water, just right there on that line. And it's weird like that sometimes. I hate to be that technical, but sometimes you have to be that technical. You know,
sometimes that's what it is. Yeah.
If you take the time to ride and learn that yourself, you'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll see it.
Yep.
You know, you'll pick those fish up on your side scan, kind of bump out a little bit, and say, okay, well, I'm not seeing them over here deeper. I'm not seeing them up here shallower. They're just right here on this line, you know. I'd say probably that.
I'd say that kind of ties into people asking the right questions. So kind of like based on what you just said, people are asking where and how instead of, why.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why and when. People see somebody else doing something, instead of sticking to what they're comfortable doing, what they're good at, they try to be somebody else because so-and-so just caught a big fish doing this. Well,
Right.
So-and-so has been doing that for a long time and has it perfected.
Right.
Not saying you can't.
I'll
like
use that as an example, like down where I fish on my end of the river. I fish where I fish because I live 2 minutes from the boat ramp. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that that's the only place that there's fish in the river.
Right.
They're all over the river. I leave out of there and I fish that stretch of the river most commonly because it's closest to my house. And why would I drive an hour to another boat ramp up the river to achieve the same thing I could putting in 2 minutes away from my house?
Yep.
But people say, okay, well, he fishes a lot. He's catching all these fish. They see all the pictures. They say, well, he's already done the homework. We just got to go down there and fish, in that area. When in reality, it could be way better fishing up there where they're at if they would just apply and take the time to ride.
Yep.
So, that gets kind of frustrating, but it's just a part of it. Anybody that's tournament fished or anybody that's done any kind of guiding or had any kind of success, whether it be YouTube or whatever, there's a pro and con to everything. And the con is usually the amount of pressure and attention that the success brings to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question from Willie. I think he's asking this question because he thinks that he feels that a lot of other people were probably thinking it and haven't asked it yet. And I'll agree with it. I've got my favorite, but Adam, what do you feel is most important for you?
Side scan.
Side scan?
100%. I don't even hardly use down imaging in 2D. They have a time and a place. Like we're getting to that time of the year now where these fish, well, we're not there yet, but as it cools down and the bait and the fish start to get dialed in for what they're going to do for winter, whether they're going to go deep, they're going to run up in creeks, they're just getting ready to gang up on each other. You know what I mean? They'll be all in there together. The bait, the fish, it'll just be one big smorgasbord. And I will use my down imaging quite a bit when I'm fishing ledges like that have a lot of bait and fish on them, just so I can break up. Because sometimes you'll pull in an area and you'll be like, man, I've hit the mother lode. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you see all this stuff on the screen everywhere. But if you cut your down imaging on, cut on that higher frequency, you're going to see the separation between those smaller fish,
right,
bait, or if there's big fish in there with them. You know what I mean? Because if you have traditional on, you're not going to tell the difference.
Right.
And certainly if you have side imaging on, you're going to see those bigger fish very clearly, in contrast with the smaller, blue cats or bait or whatever.
I think for us, we do use it for separation, but I think for our identification on our 2D sonar, like if we start marking a bunch of fish,
correct,
and go over it and see what kind of color palette we end up with, these scaled fish or these catfish, and
right.
Because in reality, the Ohio River is not a deep river. Most of our water here, 30 foot or less. That's just about all we got. So you take a cone on a 2D sonar and you're looking at, depends on what graph you're running and what frequency you're on, but you're looking at 10 to 12 feet, something like that. Well, hell, that's not giving you a very big picture of what you're looking at in the scheme of things.
That's right.
For us, it's the same. Side scan is like, without a doubt, our most valuable tool.
Right. And I'll take that back. I will use that a lot when I go places where there's Asian carp, certain times of the year. Carp, anybody that uses the side imaging a lot will verify that big Asian carp and big catfish look pretty similar on side imaging. You got to be pretty, yes, you can tell, but unless you just hit them just perfect, there's going to be some times where you're questioning, you're like, don't really know, you know what I mean? But typically, you're going to see by far more carp than you are catfish in a small contained area like that. That's usually a dead giveaway, but it certainly does help, like you mentioned, if you can ride over them to see what kind of color palette you're getting back, whether it's a hard return or soft return.
That's the problem. We're new to Asian carp issues here. We have Asian carp here. People were snagging 50-pounders at our dam this year. So I mean, I've known that they're here. We've seen them for the last couple of years, but I think we're starting to get like a big population of them. So we're starting to run into pockets. The problem I'm having is a lot of times that the color palette looks like catfish, and so we're struggling with these Asian carp. I would assume we're going to get hard returns that are scaled, and they shouldn't be looking like catfish. And the only other fish that should look like that is spoonbill. We do have a lot of spoonbill.
Yep.
And so I think, on my graph anyway, spoonbill will look like a catfish on the color palette.
Yeah.
But for me, in my mind, Asian carp should look way different. I don't know.
They should, but sometimes you'd be surprised, and they do look similar sometimes on 2D. Okay. I've noticed that as well on the rants, and that's where I kind of came into, kind of contrast that with the amount of fish because typically there's only a couple of times, less than a handful of situations to where I'm going to see Bradley messed me up.
I knew you wanted to see that.
There's only a handful of times that I'm going to see catfish and that quantity that close together. And that's usually a telltale that it's gar, it's carp, it's something else, because catfish will not typically gang up like that.
Yeah.
But I will say, like in some places on the Mississippi where you have those live oxbows, not the dead oxbows, this time of the year, that's a waste of time, in my opinion. But if you got a live oxbow and there's still water running through that thing, yes, there's going to be carp back there, but there's also probably going to be some there's definitely going to be some catfish down in there, especially if there's some deep pockets and you got some moving water back there. So just because there's Asian carp in there, that shouldn't always deter you. It's worth a try sometimes if nothing else is working. We did that pre-fish and we went back in a live oxbow, and there was Asian carp everywhere. I'm seeing them up on the surface. We were actually dragging through there, and I probably had one of the biggest takedowns that I had that entire week. It may have been a bull shark. I couldn't slow it down. He pulled that rod over and just took off and never slowed down.
It's very possible that's what it was, because that's exactly what they do when they hit. They hit and they take off running.
No, it just flatlined it. Just flatlined it and took off. We were quite a ways up the river, but I guess, they've tracked those damn sharks all the way up to St. Louis. So, that's really, even though we were quite a bit north, that's still within shark, territory.
Yeah, it's still within striking distance. I know for us, we deal with Asian carp constantly, spoonbill, all this stuff. I know a big ticket with us, especially with the side scan, because I run a Lowrance on my boat too, is I've noticed when you see those Asian carp on side scan, they are all perfectly aligned with each other. They're all pointing the exact same direction, every mark that you see. To me, that's a dead giveaway for Asian carp. Usually when you hit catfish, they're together, but they're turned a little different. They're all kind of maybe not facing opposite ways, but they're all heads pointed a little different direction. Those Asian carp, they are like on a string line, all side by side, forward of each other, but they are all facing the exact same direction. And that's a dead giveaway for us every time. And I know for the 2D, you would think there'd be a bigger difference in the color palette, but there's not. But there's a slight difference, and believe it or not, I see more of a hard return in the center of the fish than I do on the outside when it's Asian carp that I'm seeing. You think it'd be the opposite.
See, that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing the outside looks soft like a catfish, so we're running a Humminbird Helix 12 on Zach's boat, and that the color palette is green for catfish, and a big catfish will be a little bit of red in the center. But we're running into like a million fish where the screen blacks out and they're all look green on the outside and red in the center. And we're like, that's supposed to be a catfish, but there is no way that's catfish. And so that's why I had the questions, because I feel like it's got to be Asian carp, but we're not used to seeing Asian carp, especially in these numbers. And so I'm like, we're just not used to seeing that. So it was a guilty.
Yeah, you'll get used to seeing them. I've also noticed a lot on 2D that the arches are a little more stacked one on top of the other when it's Asian carp. They'll be offset from each other a little, but they'll be one on top of the other a little more, versus catfish that are almost staggered with each other when they're piled up. Because usually we'll go purposely looking for them and snag them suckers and try to get them for bait. So there's some times where I'm trying to find them, believe it or not.
So I know that Becca has been dropping links for everything in here. So if you've enjoyed hanging out with us, with Adam tonight, Adam does have a YouTube channel. You're doing TikTok and everything now, right?
Yep, I do, but I'm not super consistent with it like I was, man.
So which platform
I'd love to get to the point where I can get back into doing content more.
Yeah.
It's just very frustrating. It's not frustrating. It's very time consuming. TikTok has made it a little bit easier because the algorithm's a little bit different. It requires different, things. You don't have to, like YouTube, for example. I'd have to go out there and at least fish for 5-6 hours to get a video. Hopefully I got something worth filming. At that point, I have to bring it back. I got a couple hours in editing. It takes up a lot of time to do that one video, versus TikTok. I can take a little snippet of a 5 to 30-second video and, reach a much larger audience. So I've kind of fallen back on the content side, even on the TikTok side of things, even though it's easier. I just have a lot going on right now. And, I hope at some point it slows down to where I can get back into that stuff, because I do love it. I enjoy the content side of things, but I haven't made it a priority amongst everything else I have going on.
Actually, I'll come back to this. There's a couple questions in the queue here that are actually really good questions, but I want to circle back and talk about the fact that you told me when I asked you for a thumbnail picture, you said, man, I'm going to have to fish more.
Yeah,
I want to come back to that in a minute. But Jody asked, it's a great question, by the way, what your favorite bait is, and if you have a favorite cut of bait, so the head, body section, fillet, or what that looks like, or if it changes with the season.
There's times where my favorite cut of bait is the one that the fish are preferring most that day. That's the best answer I can give you. And I don't know if it's just that I'm putting that bait in the right places, and that's just that little strike zone that they're in. But there are certainly some times where it seems like there is a preference over heads, over body sections. I never use tails. I feel like it gives me too much room to possibly foul hook the bait. I just don't use them. I don't really feel like there's a whole lot of value. Some people may feel different. I don't like them. So I'm either using bodies or I'm using heads. And there is some days where it seems like all they'll eat is the body. Yeah. And there's some days where those big fish are just, they want those heads. It's not that you won't catch fish with the bodies. It just seems like the big fish want the heads.
And that kind of ties in. You were talking about the strike zone there. Zach asked, how close do you try to get your bait to the fish you're trying to catch? So
if I'm fishing, I'm assuming you mean like a river situation. I'm setting up on a fish on anchor. I'm going to, depends on how deep I am. First off, if I'm in 80 foot of water, I'm going to be much further away from that fish than, I maybe even closer. It just depends on how much current I got, but I'm probably going to be a little bit further away just because the geometry factor of how far I actually am away from that fish relative to how deep I am.
Okay.
Which is a whole nother can of worms.
A fathom theory. We already covered it.
But it's typically, somewhere between 50 to 20 foot of water. I'm going to set the boat about 90 feet away from that fish. That's a nice, gentle cast right back to that fish. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit closer the deeper I am.
Right.
But about 90 feet is my sweet spot. And I feel like I only fish with 5 rods typically, 6 at the most.
Yep.
If I'm on anchor, I may pull out another one if I'm dragging, but on most cases, I'm only fishing with 5 rods. And I feel like at 90 feet, I can put that bait pretty close to where it needs to be. You know what I mean? And that's another thing too, is I'm pretty thorough. Like if that fish is on this tree, 3 rods, 4, I'm getting as many rods as close to that opportunity as I can. I'm not just going to put one there and throw the rest all over the place, because if what I'm trying to fish is right here behind me, there's no sense in throwing them over there. You know what I mean? So I like 90 feet. Probably the furthest away I'll set up is about 120 feet. Any more than that, and I feel like your accuracy as far as what you're trying to fish diminishes greatly. 120 feet really isn't that far away if you actually were to measure it behind your boat, but it's far enough to where accuracy as far as casts,
Yep.
Correlation to where your GPS might have a little bit of variance in it as far as where your position is as to where the target is. I just feel like after 120 feet, you're kind of, diminishing your success a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not giving you your best chance anyway.
Captain Morgan wants to know if you anchor or drag more, or if you prefer which one.
Locally, so if I'm at home, there's certainly some places that I won't even think about anchoring. Kerr Lake, for example. If I go to Kerr, I'm not anchoring. I'm going to be on the move. I'm going to be on that trolling motor all day, all night, whenever. I'm not going to sit still. If I'm in a river and I got good flow, I would much rather, now honestly, to be complete, I'll say this. I would much rather anchor on that fish. I'd rather see him or set up on that structure and anchor up there where I know there is fish. That way I know there's fish there, and I know I can get my bait pretty close to them. So it's either one of two things. I'm either going to get them to eat, or they're just not entertained, and I'm going to move on. But I know there's fish there, and I know I'm set up correctly. So that, I feel like I can be a lot more precise, and I can get a better grasp of what's going on quickly. If they're there and you set up on them, you don't catch them, then obviously they're not interested. They either don't want what you have to eat, what you're throwing as bait, or they're just not interested. They're not the fish that I'm looking for anyway.
Yeah.
But how much time do you normally give them? Through most of the year. I know wintertime is going to be a little different.
I was going to say, I had a tournament, Cabela's, here on the James River this past year that bit me in the tail, because typically all I wait is about 20 to 35, 40 minutes. Very rarely will you see me sit anywhere longer if I'm not catching a fish.
I will not sit
however, right before that Cabela's tournament, it just changed. It was not typical. And you had to give those fish a little bit more time that day. But it happened literally before the tournament. And it took me a while. Actually, I didn't realize it till the very last stop of the day. I set up on some fish that I knew were there. I knew we were going to bite. 20 minutes rolls around, they didn't bite. 30 minutes rolls around, they didn't bite. 40 minutes rolls around, they didn't bite. I said, all right, we're just going to get the heck out of here. We're going to go find some other fish. We only got time for one more spot. So I go set up on this last place, not far from the ramp. We had about an hour and 10 minutes left. I said, this is it. We don't have time for anything else. We're just going to sit here. It's either going to happen or it wouldn't. Last 10 minutes of the tournament, rod gets freaking smoked. Fish took line, went back into the tree, couldn't get him out. But either way, I was like, okay, well, that took an hour to finally get a bite. We had no bites prior to that.
Oh, wow.
The very next day, I had a trip. Okay, so I went back to some of those other places that I fished, and I said, I'm going to just see something. The wind was kind of bad that day anyway. Went back there. I said, we're just going to sit here. We're going to be patient. We're just going to see what happens. Waited. Never got a bite until like an hour. I don't know the exact time frame, but it was over an hour. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. We caught a 60 and a 55 within. It was a double. You know, so there's certainly sometimes that you gotta, if you know they're there,
Yeah,
you can go both ways about it. If you know they're there, I mean, you can certainly sit there and just be patient and hope it works out.
I have a hard
I
time.
personally don't like doing that because you can waste a lot of time very quickly. I'd rather set up, catch them, and move on. But
yeah, that's how I feel. If they're actively feeding, you should know within 20 minutes.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's just my personal opinion. But when you're anchoring, are you actually dropping an anchor or are you spot locking?
Spot lock. The hell with that anchor.
Yeah, I feel you, brother. I got one on the boat in case I got too much flow or something crazy is going on. But yeah, I'm going to spot lock every single time.
Yeah. I don't throw that anchor unless like you said, I absolutely got to.
Somebody's calling you out. This Facebook user's been on you tonight. I'm not sure who it is. We'll have to go back and take a look. He says you do not like to wait on him.
I don't. I don't like hard-headed fish. I do not.
I think it's the same person said, are we actually asking Adam for advice tonight?
That might be your tournament partner.
Describe your favorite fishing hole using coordinates only.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, so
you go right up the river to that first bend. There's a leaning pine right there. You look right underneath of it. There's two stakes that kind of stick up. That's not the spot. You got to go about another 12 miles past that. But I was just saying that as a reference.
Yeah.
Homie has a 40-pound anchor. Hell with that thing. All right.
I do. Right. I have a monster anchor. So if that is my tournament partner, I'm not going to say it was Jay's fault. Okay. All I'm going to say is that Jay picked up the trolling motor and we took off and the trolling motor deployed itself. Yeah. I'm not going to say it was his fault. Just saying he was the last one that touched it. So either way, the trolling motor got destroyed. It is what it is. Not a big deal. Actually, a funny story. I actually lost 2 anchors that night as well, but we won't get into that either.
Oh boy.
But after that, I knew it was going to be about a week till I could get my trolling motor fixed because it was an older Tarova and they had to order the shaft and yada, yada, yada. So I got an anchor and I put about 10 foot. It's not Jay, but I pulled that anchor. I got about 10 foot worth of chain on it just because I said that if I have to anchor, I want to make sure that I stay put wherever I'm going to go. I don't care what's going on, if it's a hurricane, if the current's going 100 miles an hour. If I throw that thing out, I'm going to want to stay wherever I put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that chain is important. It makes
it's a monster. It's easily 30 pounds, and then the chain's probably another 20 pounds.
Yeah, I've got a big one like that too, because when I have to resort to throwing that thing, it means business. Because there's times, especially in that Chafflaw River, when it's fast, that 5/8 anchor rope, it'll hum.
Oh yeah,
the current so fast, and you can't be playing around with those little anchors.
Mm-mm.
Hey, thanks, Kevin, by the way, for the super chase. When I use chicken, I always use the body sections. Never can chicken. I'm not that bougie. All right, Adam, we only got time for another question or two. So I know there's going to be a lot of variables to this question, but if you had to go find one big fish in a river, we'll just say fall, right? Because we're in the fall, we're all geared up, we're all geeked out about the cooler temperatures coming. It's the beginning of October, and you've got to find one big fish in a river system. Where are you going?
It's the water already Is the temperature already dropping?
Yep. October, the water's starting to drop. We're talking, I'd say 72 degrees, 71.
And that's on the decline. Assuming the temperature is on that trend, which 70 is still kind of relatively high, but assuming that it's on the trend, that it is on the decline, and those fish have already moved out of their summer areas, they're starting to move and migrate a little bit. I'm going to look in those in-between sections between there and their wintering areas. So obviously it's not quite cold enough to where they're going to be anywhere. I mean, there may be some fish around those wintering areas now.
Right.
Obviously, but majority of your fish are going to be traveling to those areas in the fall. As it gets colder, progressively cooler and cooler, those fish, again, they're not smart, but they know how to survive. They do things out of necessity. So they know change is coming. They are on the way to get ready for winter. And chances are, too, this time of the year, you're not just going to find one big fish. Unless you're fishing very isolated home body places where there is just one fish in there, which the thing about those fish is they kind of march to the own beat of their drum. And if you go in there and catch them pre-fishing, you're not going to catch them the day of the tournament.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your better chances is to find those migrating fish that are traveling in groups together. They kind of get in packs. It almost seems like, and they migrate in schools together.
Yep.
Whether that's they're getting ready to. Wintering areas can mean a lot of different things. Typically, I like to look for areas that are either extremely deep, that have somewhat of shallow water access nearby that they can easily get to.
Gotcha.
Actually, that's probably the picture perfect place that I can give you as far as a wintering area. Somewhere that has flow, but it also has areas that they can get out of it, and also has the ability to get to that shallow water. So I'm going to look in between those areas. So if I know, for instance, in my home body of water, 7 miles down the river, these fish have been holding in this 3-mile stretch right here. They've been right here. They might not be in the same little spot every day. They're somewhere in here. That water temperature is dropping. It's not fluctuating. It's on that downward trend. I know those fish are headed to that wintering area. They're not going the other way. They're going to the easiest and most convenient place that holds whatever they're going to need to survive throughout the winter. I'm not saying you're not going to have some fish that might go the other way, but majority of your fish are smart enough to know, and how they know that, I don't know. I'm not a fish. I just know that that's just what they're going to do. That's at least where I'm going to look first. And maybe they're already close in proximity to that area. But one thing that I would encourage you, or whoever it is that's asking this question, is to look in those in-between areas. It may not be anything visual that you see. You may be looking around this thing. It might be all offshore stuff. But don't be afraid to graph through that area that just looks bland. You know what I mean? It doesn't look like anything's going on in there. Ride through there, be thorough, and check those in-between areas. So if summer is, point A, and winter is point C, look in B. You know what I mean? Look in that in-between area, because they're going to that direction.
Right.
They're going to get ready for winter if that water temperature is starting to drop.
So my typical go-to there is anytime they're traveling. So coming out of spring or out of winter into spring, or and fall into winter, is the channel ledges. So anytime, like you're saying, they're going to be traveling. They're going from to to fro. And for me, that means where they're going to travel on the highway, and I need to go sit on the highway and intercept these fish, wherever that means.
Right. And, a ledge, people always seem to miscommunicate a ledge. A ledge does not have to be something jagged, you know what I mean? Ledge like a wall,
Right.
It can be very subtle. It can be a ledge that only rises every 100 yards. You know what I mean? And those, in my opinion, are some of the best ones, what I call a ledge, even though there's nothing like really
drastic
that rises up. It'll very much so easily, because those fish will definitely be in a section of the water that they're most happy with. You know, like I was telling you about those depths, you know, those depth variances where sometimes they'll just be in this depth. That's just where they're happy. It may be a little different between the morning and midday, but they're going to be in this depth. And some of those are the easiest way to break down fish if you don't mind fishing offshore like that. It's hard for some people to do that because they like to see, they get caught up and I like to see this and I like to see this. And if I don't see this, I'm not happy. But, you know, you got to understand, you know, fish have tails. They don't have addresses. They're not always going to be around structure. You know, they're not always going to do this. You know, you'd be surprised how many fish I catch with absolutely nothing around them. They're just there in this depth. You know what I mean? That's just where they're happy. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I'm going to put bait down there and I'm going to see if I can catch one of them. So, you know, a ledge doesn't always have to be that jagged thing that, you know, you see in the pictures and in your mind, you think a ledge. And sometimes it can be a very subtle slope. You know what I mean? Technically, it's still a ledge. So don't overlook that stuff. It can make it very easy, if you don't mind graphing, to find those fish in those areas, because typically those will be a softer bottom too, and those catfish will contrast very good on that soft bottom. Sometimes it can be tough on a hard bottom. Yeah. It can be tough. Sometimes you got to adjust some things so you can see what you want, but typically the ledges that I'm talking about, it's going to be softer. You know, it's going to be more subtle, you know, and don't overlook that stuff. Even if there's, you know, there's no structure there, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a bad habit that I have right now is, you know, especially in my area, I've got a lot of deep water, a lot of real steep, nasty ledges, things like that. And I tend to want to just run to those areas. I want like the biggest scour hole, the steepest ledge, you know, I tend to run to all this big stuff, but I tend to drive by maybe 4 or 5 miles of what you're talking about, not even look at it, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want to find the steepest, deepest, nastiest hole I can find, and let's see if there's fish there. And then half the time when they're not there, then you scratch your head like, okay, now what? It's like what you're talking about. I'm overlooking all that stretch where they could be, sometimes for no apparent reason.
It's just like the Mississippi when I went down there, you know, about 75% of the fish that we caught were on that muddy, sandy, rolling bottom. Yep. And they were very easy to find like that. Once I knew there was a certain depth, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, these fish are in this depth right here. I'm looking for these same areas that are holding the same kind of depth and the same kind of contour, the same kind of bottom. And it was very easy at that point to connect the dots, because I knew, you know, which sides of the river were going to create that bottom, just because of how much flow they would typically get. And it was very easy at that point to, you know, I'd say, okay, well, this is predictable. I know.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. Way too much meat. Way too much. Thank you.
Let's bring him back. There we go. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Range on my side scan most of the time, 120 feet.
Really?
If I want to get really, really out, you know, obviously Lowrance, all these depth finders now, you can zoom in.
Oh, yeah.
120 feet, I've trained my eyes to see and know what size fish based off of how fast I'm going typically, to if it's something worth stopping and checking out a little bit more. 120 feet is good for me. There is times when I start getting in real deep water, like 60 plus foot of water, I'm going to bump it out obviously to 160, 180 feet sometimes. And at that point, it becomes less about trying to see fish.
Yeah.
Because at 180 feet, it's going to be really difficult on side scan to see those fish. That's where I will use my down imaging a little bit more.
Right.
I'll try to start looking at it a little bit more closely to see if I can see those big swim bladders underneath the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly when I get out that deep, I'm looking at structure anyway, deep water structure. There's only a couple of times that I'm going to fish that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Other than when I go to the Mississippi. You go to the Mississippi, you never know. You might be fishing 120 foot of water. You might be fishing 20 foot of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah. It's very, very, very drastic out there. Very,
Yes.
very, very drastic. I've got some holes that I still don't know exactly how deep they are because the bottom 30 feet at least is solid timber, just old logs down. I don't know how deep that hole is. The top of the log pile is 130 feet deep. How deep it goes, I don't know.
Right.
Adam, one more question real quick, and we'll get you out of here. We're already over an
Oh,
hour.
hell, whatever. Whenever we get done, we get done.
We've had 70 to 80 people all night with us hanging out. So, man, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about bite window. And so I'll just give you a little insight. Down here right now, we seem to be on fish until noon. And at noon, game over. And so we're scratching our heads thinking, did the fish really stop biting? Did they just move? Can we not find them? Because, in most cases, we're on, like the other day, we were on fish all day. And we know they were catfish all day. We were finding fish. We were marking good fish. And we could not get them to bite anything. We're like, what in the hell is going on? And then we started, well, the moon is up at 8 o'clock in the morning. We got moonrise. Is that a factor? We got bluebird skies. Is this a factor? And it's like, we're doing everything. We're on fish. We got fresh bait. We are dragging right in front of their faces and they are not eating. What the hell?
I think there certainly is a correlation when it's a full moon to that Solinar period, when that moon is still high in the sky to when it drops over the horizon. And I'm not going to even act like I know exactly why that is, but on a full moon, there is definitely a bite window, in my opinion, when that moon it's in the morning time. You know what I mean? It's still up there in the sky, and then that thing drops down below the horizon, and for whatever reason, those fish bury down in the mud, or they just seem to stop being interested in whatever you got going on. And I don't know why, but it certainly does seem to slow things down a little bit on a full moon. On, the rest of the month, I don't think that Solinar is that much of a factor. I'm kind of the believer that they're always biting somewhere. And, they may have moved out a little bit deeper. They may have moved up a little bit shallower.
Yeah.
They may have went to structure. They may have, just started moving. Maybe they're on nothing. Maybe they're just up on the flats. Obviously, I'm too stubborn to accept the fact that they're not biting. Even though sometimes it's just like that. Sometimes you just don't catch them, man. It is fishing at the end of the day. We try to do everything that we can. You buy the right reels, rods, electronics, boats. You do all the right things, catching bait and prepping it and make sure it's good and fresh. Sometimes it still just doesn't happen. You're dealing with something that doesn't want to be caught.
Well, I guess the biggest thing is, like for me, like full moon, for me, the moon phase really doesn't matter because that's just what we see from here, right? The moon's in the sky. It's the whole moon. It ain't part of the moon, right? So like right now here, well, right now everywhere, moonrise is like 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. So the moon comes out in the morning and is visible right now through the day. Now, we only see it as a partial moon because the sun, it's just a shadow of our Earth. But the whole moon's there. So the effect of the moon is still the effect of the moon, in my opinion. You
have the gravitational pull of different times of the month to where that moon is in correlation with our side of the hemisphere. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're right, because this is something that I don't research enough about, I don't have the luxury to. When somebody books with me 3 months out from now, I'm not thinking, oh no, you can't book these days because it's going to be a full moon. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just going to say, yeah, you know. It's either a good bite or I wouldn't waste my time that time of the year. It's either going to be one of two things. But I certainly think, and I know it definitely affects tidal rivers. I would assume that it would affect everywhere else, and it probably has the same effect as it does on high pressure systems versus low pressure systems, and these fish having swim bladders. I would imagine it has some kind of correlation where that moon is in the gravitational pull. You know, because at the end of the day, and I'm not going to get all hippie on you, but everything is tied in to one another. You know what I mean? There's a way that animals know certain things are happening. You know what I mean? And what it is inside of them that makes them do that, I don't have that answer. You know who would be probably a pretty good guy to ask? He might get on here, he might not, is that Wallace Sykes guy. He's kind of into that kind of stuff.
Who is it?
Wallace Sykes. He used to be really big on Facebook and posting all the time. I think he kind of dialed back just because some of the backlash that he was getting. But
we don't mind backlash.
No.
But he's real into that kind of stuff. He may know a little bit more about it, and maybe he doesn't. My perception is he knows a little bit more about how, you know, the sonar and the moon and different pressures affect different things between animals and fish. I just know that during a full moon, especially during the spawning periods, definitely plays a big role in fish activity. And I know when that moon is still up there, I'm usually good during the day. And it drops below there, and I don't know what the heck happens. They just crawl down in the mud, and it gets slow.
No kidding. So for me, it felt like the opposite. Like the moon is up and fish activity is low, and we're blaming the moon because we're not going to take.
But I will say that when our moon is out, our currents are moving better than when it disappears. So in my case, it being a tidal river, once that moon disappears and that gravitational pull is not as strong because it creeps back on the other side of the earth, our flows aren't as strong.
So back to what you said earlier, the current is more important than most things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because you'll go through, and we get that a lot around the full moons, to where the current will be ripping hard this tide, the next tide it won't move, and the fish just don't bite. You know what I mean? It's not that they don't bite; it's just very tough. You know, it's an instant change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when, you know, you'll instantly, after a day, you'll know, okay, well, after this tide right here, I'm going to have to drag the rest of the day. I'm not going to be able to anchor.
It sounds like these guys know this Wallace guy from Watts Bar. So
yeah, I got a couple of them talking about it.
Yeah, we might have to check into this guy and get him on the show. We're always looking for. I'll be honest with you. One of the things me and Jeremy's always talking about is just being different. Our show to be different. You know, as far as information that we share, different perspectives from different anglers and different styles, techniques, and things like that. You know, we both respect the hell out of you, your abilities to do what you've been doing and chase your passion. And so it was a no-brainer to ask you to come on and talk about hunting big fish.
Our favorite subject.
Our favorite subject. That's right.
Our favorite subject.
Yeah. I know during a full moon, the deer hunting is awesome at night. Sean, you ain't supposed to be hunting deer at night.
Not supposed to and can't is two different things. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
That's it.
Two different things. And you see, it's funny because everybody talks about like the time of day, you know, bite windows. You know, fish bite good in the morning and taper off as the days goes. And I find most people around the country would agree with all of that, except me. For some reason in our area, and it's not just me, it's a couple of other guys that fish local that say the same thing. you can forget, and this is all year, you can forget about catching a big fish probably before 10 o'clock in the morning. For some reason, in the middle of the day, all year, every year, is where we catch our big fish. And we seem to be the oddballs of versus the rest of the country. I mean, we've proved it in a lot of the live tournaments to where, people are catching fish early in the morning. I'm just kind of sitting there watching my rods. About 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody else's bite slows off. My rods start going down, and the fish just get bigger and bigger as the day goes. And I've yet to figure out why that is. Is it because we're so far south that it just changes something? But, Dad and I talked about this a while back. We have never, and I mean in 5 years, never caught a 50-plus pound fish before 10:30 in the morning. We've never done it.
Wow.
Yeah, never.
Yeah,
In fact, if we kind of went back and looked at a lot of stuff, noon and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that's our hottest times for catching a 50-plus. Middle of the day. We got to be backwards from everybody else. I have no idea why. Go figure. I can't explain it.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's totally opposite for us. Noon, 1 o'clock, we might as well pack it up. I mean, we can drag. Like the other day, we went and we just started going everywhere and dragging, and we're marking fish. And I think like after 11 or 12, we may have caught one more fish till like 3 o'clock. We fished for like 4 more hours, caught one fish. But the first 4 hours, we caught like 20 some fish.
Zach, we usually have our boat in the water either right at or right after daylight. We don't start late.
Two-Stan says, I'm a big believer in all the side stuff, moon phase, pressure, weather, et cetera, affects the bite. To me, there is not one thing, but the more positive things occurring, the better the bite. I agree with that. So any one thing can't really shut the bite off. But if you start accumulating several negative occurrences, whether it's the moon phase, high pressure, drastic weather change, cold front, things like that, you start adding all that together, then it could. But I'll be honest with you, Zach and I have gone out in some of the shittiest weather, shittiest conditions that everyone says, you're not catching fish today. That's kind of how we got the nickname of River Warriors. It's kind of started out as a joke because we didn't care. We went fishing when we could. We didn't care what the situation. And we've had some of the best days ever on the days that everyone said it can't be done. And
I'll say that really the only day that I'm off the table and I'll go if they want to go. Obviously, if somebody books 3 months, 4 months, 6 months out, you don't have the luxury of knowing that a cold front is going to land, right behind their trip. But I'm always very honest about that with people. After a cold front, especially a drastic one, I'm not trying to go. I'm not trying to waste anybody's time because I know it's probably going to be a waste of time, especially after it's already cold. These first couple that come through that aren't as drastic, aren't as bad in the fall. You can still catch fish after them. Obviously, the bite is going to be phenomenal before them. It's going to be a little bit slower after. But like after we get to late fall and in the winter, when you get those cold fronts, if I have a skunk day, which I haven't had a skunk day in not last winter, winter before last.
That's a good sign if you had to think that hard about it.
Well, I'm trying to think. Hold on. I may have had a skunk day.
I don't have to think hard about that.
I think it was the January before last, and it was right after a cold front. And one of the hardest cold fronts that we had of the year. And just could not catch anything. Couldn't catch them. It didn't matter what I did. I just could not catch a fish. think the year before that I had a skunk day. It was about January after a real brutal cold front. And it just wasn't. It was just tough. When it gets that cold and you have a cold front blow through, I mean, it just does not do you any justice. I'd prefer not to even go.
Yeah.
So, Zach says wind and lightning are basically the only two things that keeps us off the water. Extreme wind, it's just no fun. I mean, you could catch a fish, but man, it tears you down just fighting wind all day. So extreme wind,
it's brutal.
And lightning is about the only two things that keep us off the water. Shoot, I had another question right before I start talking. Let's see. A hurricane will. Oh, so cold front. How many hours before the cold front do you feel that the bite is? Because we all know that right before that cold front hits, that bite is going to be good.
So a lot of people will tell you. A lot of people will tell you 15 hours.
15, okay.
But let me say this: there's always that period as the cold front's coming in. 12, 15 hours, whatever, 10 hours, to where the wind's going to be a little bit. It's going to be blowing a little bit more. You know what I mean? Things are changing, and then you're going to go through a lull period to where it's just flat calm right before that pressure and everything flip-flops.
Yeah.
It may last 30 minutes. It may last 2-3 hours before it finally flip-flops. But right before that happens, not only will the bite be good that day, but right before that happens, if you can, usually it'll be slow right when it dies off. Things will kind of calm down. For whatever reason, it'll just slow down. And then maybe like an hour or two right before that thing finally blows in. I mean, it's just magic. That 105 that we caught at Kerr last year, kind of the same situation. I spent 2 days down there riding, didn't fish, found some good fish. And I said, okay, right before that cold front, we're going to fish that day. All morning, it was good. Catching fish, everything was great. We went through a little lull period where it just laid down flat, didn't catch anything, nothing. And I actually helped Eric Simmons with Fat Fish Designs. I was filming a thing for him, and I told my buddy, I said, here, just drag right up this contour. And, whenever by the time I get done, you should be at the other end of it. Well, as we get back to the boat, he's reeling in a 60-pounder. And he's like, man, the last 20 minutes, it's been out of this world. It's just been one fish after another. And I said, well, damn, they must be getting ready to bite right before this front blows in.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe we should run down to the other end of the lake where we saw those big fish. He's like, man, you sure you don't want to just take a small little drag through here? I said, well, we'll just look at it. We go on down through there. Just a little small pocket, 75 yards long, where there was just bait balled up. You could see these big fish here and there. They were just ganged up together, pushing this bait up in these balls. And I said, all right, well, we're going to take a little drag through here. And it won't 10 minutes into that drag. We caught that one.
Wow.
But it wasn't even, so by the time we caught that fish, I guess what I'm getting to is weighed him. It took us probably, got him in the live well, 35, 40 minutes later. By the time we got him to the dock, weighed him, went live, went back out. When we went back out, that front had already started blowing in. We didn't catch nothing else.
Yeah.
So,
it was over there.
We caught him like right on the cusp of when that happened. You know what I mean?
There you go. Two Stands has a really, really good question here. For anyone that's trying to move up to that next level of fish, whether that's moving from eaters to 20 pounders to 30 pounders or from 50s to 70s up to 80s, what is the one thing you recommend for people to focus on to become that next level? Whether it's in the beginning or you've been doing it a long time like most of us.
Man, I hate to say it like this because most of the big fish that I see, most of the big fish that I catch, I see. I very rarely will just set up somewhere. Well, I can tell you right now, I'm never going to just set up somewhere and just hope I catch one.
Yeah.
And I feel like that plays a very big role into the success that I've had over the years with big fish. And I know it's one of the most contributing factors. And I'm not saying that I'm on this pedestal or anything like that.
Right. No.
But I have been very successful over the years at catching big fish. And it's other people out there that are fishing my body of water that have been fishing it longer or fishing it just as much as I have, fishing the same areas that I'm fishing, that are not catching the fish that I'm catching. And I think that really comes down to taking the time to understand these electronics and figuring out how to set up on these fish, and figuring out what fish are feeding fish, why these fish are going to bite. Like when you're on a ledge, say for instance the current is going downstream and all the fish are facing downstream, I know that I'm probably not going to get those fish to bite. You know what I mean? Because they're not staged into the current. By the time I set up on them, there's a very good chance they're going to just keep going.
They're gone.
You know what I mean? Knowing little things like that, and it just takes time. It really does. And I hate to say that that's the way to do it, because I'm sure there is other ways. There's other things that I'm missing that I would have. If you maybe give me a minute or two, I could probably think about it. Maybe give you a little bit more of a hopeful answer.
Yeah.
No,
but I'll say one of the most contributing factors to how I do it is learning my electronics, trusting them, and learning out, not only just learning about them, but learning how to actually use them effectively.
Yep.
There's one thing to have that $4,000 depth finder on there.
Yes.
There's another thing to actually be able to use it to be successful with.
I use, and I hope he's still in here. I know Stan's still in here, but Stan 3 is a great example of this. He doesn't have a high-tech fancy. Matter of fact, I think his fish finder, at least he may have upgraded by now, but was a black and white, old, whatever. But he knew.
I come from a place that I didn't start out with. I didn't even have a depth finder when I first got going. When I first started fishing this river, I fished it my entire life. My old man, my brothers, but like really fishing it by myself, because they didn't catfish. So all this catfish stuff, I had to figure this stuff out myself. So that was 17 years ago. Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
I didn't have a depth finder. I had a rope with 5-foot increments in my anchor rope to where I could feel the bottom to figure out where the drop was. I had a paper map, you know what I mean, to where I knew about where I was. I'm like, okay, well, here's the channel edge right here. And the thing that's unfortunate about this answer is that the river is not in the same condition that it was when I first started fishing it back then.
100%.
That goes for all of us.
And that's a key thing that I want to say and reiterate here, is that it's not that you have to have all these depth finders and stuff. It's just the way the river fishes nowadays, as pressured as it is, it definitely helps to be able to find these little key things under the water that are not pressured, that are going to have fish on them.
Yep.
That's where a lot of my success comes from, being able to find that stuff offshore that is not visual to the eye. Because if I ride down the river and I see this swing in the river, or I sing this wing dike, yeah, it looks good. Yeah, it should hold fish, but everybody else can see that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a pressured area. But that one little brush pile right there, that one tree, that one transition on the bottom, or that mussel and mud bottom meat, or whatever it is that nobody else is seeing other than the people that are riding down through there slowly, that's got fish on them. If you don't have a depth finder, you're not going to see that stuff. You're not going to know it's there. And that's, in today's age, it's definitely one of the most contributing factors to how I fish and my success. And no matter where I'm at in the country, if I'm home, If I'm in the Mississippi, if I'm in Tennessee, I'm in Santee Cooper, it doesn't matter. And that's not to say for anybody out there, I never want to discourage anybody to where they say, well, I can't buy a $3,000 depth finder, so I'm just shit out of luck, because that's not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying that to consistently catch big fish, sometimes on a day-to-day basis, you need to take the time to apply yourself. If this is something that you really want to do, take the time to apply yourself to invest in your craft, invest in electronics, and invest in doing everything that you can to try and learn how to use them. Whether you hire somebody like me to show you how to use them, or you watch every YouTube video out there and you just spend a bunch of time out there slowly looking at that thing until you your eyes start to see what's there. Because I can tell you right now, even when I got going on better electronics about 7 years ago, I'm riding over stuff that I know was there then, but I wasn't, my eyes weren't trained enough to see it. You know what I mean? It wasn't, my eyes didn't have the depth perception to really understand what I was looking at. And now, to me, it's like crystal clear now. I could damn near tell you the miles on that damn truck underneath the water, if I look at it long enough. But
tire size.
But
what size graph are you running, Adam?
A 12.
12? Okay. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. From where I started, big difference,
Yeah.
And I've used a lot of different graphs over the years. They all do good things.
Yep.
I'm a fan of the Lowrance platform because I feel like it's the most user friendly, and it does a little bit of good at everything that the other ones have specialties on.
Yeah.
Humminbird, I'm not really a fan of the 2D, but it has really crisp side imaging.
Yeah, you can't deny that. Side scan and all those things.
Very, very crisp side imaging. The Garmin, I'm just not a Garmin fan, I'm not going to lie. Panoptics is great on Garmin. Some of the newer ones, they are nice. You can do a lot with the Garmin to dial it in as far as cone selection, independent frequencies. There's a lot of fine tuning you can do with Garmin, but I still feel like my Lowrance sees stuff way better, and I don't have to go through nearly the amount of trouble to change cone width and different bandwidth of frequencies. I just feel like out of the box, somebody who's trying to learn a little bit about them, Lowrance is probably your easiest plug and play. Maybe adjust the contrast some and just get to it.
Yeah, I've always thought that was Garmin. I'm a Garmin guy. All right, I got Garmin's are affordable.
Yeah,
I'm cheap.
They're affordable, and you really can't. There is a tremendous amount of settings on them. There really is.
I think they're easy to navigate. I don't really have a problem with the navigation. Where I feel like Humminbird has a really steep learning curve. There's
a lot of adjustments.
Yeah, I think
enhancement, contrast, sensitivity.
Yeah.
A lot of different things that you can tweak something the wrong way, and just if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know how to make it look good. You know what I mean? You're like, Jesus Christ, that looks horrible, worse than it did before I started.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've gone reset factory defaults because I've messed with everything so much that I was just like, all right, I can start over. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you're better off just to go back to factory defaults as just continue to go down this rabbit or wormhole of trying to fix something. But thanks again, Becca. She's been dropping the website there. If you guys, if you haven't figured out, Adam is a guide over on. Do you guide outside of the James? Do you travel? Kerr Lake. Okay.
Yeah.
Or the James River, Kerr Lake. If you guys ever, if you haven't picked up by now that this guy knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's talking about.
Oh yeah.
Most of the time. there's some days where I leave the river wondering, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I'll tell you like this: you're right more often than the rest of us. How about that?
Yeah, there you
A
go.
lot more often.
Yeah, we leave the river too. Like the other day, we scratching our head like, what happened? What could we have done differently? This is, that's why we come up with the moon and the sky. This is the stuff that me and Zach talk about on the boat. We get geeky about stuff. We're like,
I think I know there's a couple of guys. Willie's one of them guys in the chat. I think him and Chris Souders, they kind of feel the the TI2 is a very user-friendly unit.
That's what I run on mine.
I use those for years. Super cheap unit. You can see and do a lot with those TI2s.
Yeah, I love mine.
I think
I can't say enough about them. I mean, the screen, obviously, you're not going to compete with that HDS 12 or HDS whatever because it's got a glass screen. The depth perception of that image is by far more crisp and it has better resolution, better pixel rate. But the TI2, you can't. I used it for years. I've had several of them. I love that unit. But I know Willie and Chris Souders, they feel that the moon definitely, at least on lakes, has a big, and I think with flatheads as well, I think maybe more so than the blues, seems to affect them a lot more. We don't have enough flatheads here to where I feel like I can, I catch them. I'm not a flathead master. Not even gonna lie to you.
Gotcha.
If we had more of them that I could consistently target, it'd be a little bit different. But if I was a flathead fisherman here, I'd probably have a drinking problem because there's only but so many of them you're going to catch where they're most prominent to where you're going to start putting pressure on them to where you're not going to catch them. You're either going to drive them out of there or you're eventually going to kill them from stress from catching them so much.
Yeah. Yeah, we love catching flatheads. But we enjoy targeting blues more. Every year, Zach and I do the same thing. Every year we say, all right, this year we are going to target flatheads more. We've got to. We love catching flatheads. But then we get out there and like, I want to drag. I want to bump.
Well, you can go to Gunnersville. I mean, them guys, they don't even really actually, I shouldn't say that. There's some lakes on the Tennessee River to where those guys, they don't even target flatheads and they catch them.
Yeah.
They just drag and they catch the hell out of them.
Zach, the morning start out dragging the Ohio. First 3 fish you put in the boat are all flatheads dragging. I'm like, where'd that come from?
Apparently, the only way I can catch big yellowcat is if I get out the boat and go on the bank.
That was awesome.
While I'm at work, apparently. That's the only way I can catch them, apparently. Other than that, nothing but blues. Go figure.
Boy, man, look at this. It's 9:45, man. We turn this hour show. We could probably do this till midnight, but I know I gotta get up early, and Jeremy definitely has to get up early for work.
Yeah.
But we got to leave them hungry for more.
That's right. That's right.
Adam, you're welcome anytime you want to come hang out and talk fishing with us. I've definitely put a lot of tools in my toolbox tonight, things to think about, some scenarios and just different. I think more so some confirmation on things and thoughts and ideas that I had an perception of, and you confirmed some of those and put some new stuff in my head. So, man, we really appreciate you hanging out with us and talking catfish. Hopefully you guys tonight had a good time. Like I said, we've been running 70, 80 folks in here all night long. We still got almost 60 people now hanging out with us.
Good crowd tonight.
Yeah, good crowd, good conversations going on. You could tell when you got a good guest when the conversation's slow. The sidebar has been pretty slow tonight because a lot of people are just really listening and really paying attention.
A lot of note taking tonight.
We love our audience. I think I'll say it again and again. I think we have probably the most engaged group of chat and all of our community is what hangs out here on Tuesday night. I feel is just really here to gather something. They want to take something home, and I feel they ask appropriate questions to get what they want out of the show. So Thanks to everybody for tuning in with us. I can't remember what we had picked out for next week. I don't remember if we even got. You don't. I don't know either. We've got a few more. I've got a few guests on standby, so we're gonna have to make some phone calls this week. We're going to have to find this Wallace Sykes guy.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe he'll want to talk.
I'm intrigued.
He's kind of private in some ways, so I mean, maybe he will, maybe he won't, but he's definitely a wealth of knowledge. You know, he's definitely, in my opinion, one of those guys that are. You may not see a lot from him anymore. He's definitely one of the top guys, in my opinion, in the country. Somebody who has the ability to consistently catch big fish. He is probably, you know what? He's probably, honestly, kind of the opposite of me. I'm a little bit more technical. I have a lot of different things in my toolbox. Not saying that he doesn't. But I'm certainly a little bit more technical as far as depth finders, technology, doing certain things that is in the more newer age, you know, whether it comes, we didn't really talk about this, but like active target, you know, using that for catfish and stuff like that. He's definitely a lot more old school in his approach, but is still very successful at it, you know.
That'd be an interesting.
It would be.
Yeah, that would be an interesting.
Like I said, you don't see a lot from him anymore. But I think if he'd be willing to come out and hang out and talk with you, I think it'd be a really good show. Especially for some of those guys like Stan, you know, was asking and talking about, you know, some of the questions he had. And I hate to be like that. I really do. I'm not saying that you have to have a depth finder. I want to really reiterate that before we get off here. You don't. It certainly helps. And that's just how I fish, you know. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it. And you can certainly do it without a depth finder. And it'll come back all the way full circle to where we started. It just comes down to understanding the fish and understanding how water temperatures and conditions affect them. And eventually, if you look in the right places enough, you're gonna consistently catch them. The depth finder just helps you narrow it down a little bit quicker because now you can see if they're actually there.
There you go.
Well, and not only that, but I think, in my opinion, it helps you make a better decision on where you should be or what you should be doing. You might not specifically see the fish, although that's what we all hope for. But if you get a good clear side image and you could see, hey, the ledge is actually, you know, over here, you know, 80 feet. Let's go check this ledge out, or, you know, you just get to make better decisions. You just have more information.
Correct. You know. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful without it. You know? It definitely helps you out. It definitely narrows down your search a lot quicker. You know, because instead of fishing this thing that you don't know if it has fish on it or not, I'm going to ride past there. And I'm going to see if it's on there or not. And, you know, sometimes you might leave fish that you could have caught. Maybe they're buried down in there. You know, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I know some guys that have sat down on that thing. I'll ride right over it. And I'm like, man, there ain't no fish on that thing. An hour later, I'll see somebody post a picture. They didn't sat on that thing and caught a fish. I'm like, well, daggone, I just went by it, won't nothing on it. You know, so sometimes electronics will help or hurt you. Just like they'll help you. But, you know, in most cases, 90% of the time, it's going to definitely help you narrow things down a lot quickly.
Yep. That's basically what Stan here said is you answered it perfect. It's all about knocking out non-productive water more quickly.
Correct. That's, you know what, that was the best. I could have just said that in that took 10 minutes.
There you go. And I know for us, sometimes it's not just seeing that the fish are there, but, you know, like I always talk about my hydro. Depending on how the fish are in there, am I going to bump them today? Am I going to anchor up on them today? Or, you know, if there's one fish behind every one of the 75 humps in that thing, I probably don't want to anchor on. Bumping's the way to go. But if they're all piled up against that one big ledge, well, then I know what to do. I ain't bumping. I'm throwing my anchoring rods at them. It helps a lot to determine how to fish them, and not only just are they there or not.
Right.
It helps us a lot.
Yeah.
Keep kicking my tripod. Yeah, tell you the truth.
Well, I started to say goodnight. We'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. But I thank everybody for hanging out with us. Adam, again, thanks, buddy, for
absolutely anytime
talking with us, man. I've had a really good time tonight, man. Almost 2 hours. It went by fast.
Hopefully we don't wait another year to do it again.
No, that's not.
Absolutely.
That's not. I like it when we stay like on subject. So we'll have to talk about like another key subject that you're passionate about, or something you want to talk about, like fall, winter time, or whatever. I think winter would be great.
I think so too.
And
best times, in my opinion.
I love winter fishing.
I like winter. Yep.
I love winter fishing. But anyway, we'll see you guys here next Tuesday night. Same cat time, same cat channel. We'll catch you on the next cast. Good night, everybody.
Go fish, everybody.